How about now? Did not realize did not realize my microphone was on mute. And I often do that when I record too. I was saying I just get other people on here as guests because I don't really know how to do these lives yet. Everybody's kind of figuring out how to do it at their own pace and what to do on it. And I'm better when I can edit myself from a recording. Let me try and send this link again so he can jump on here. Anyways, this week's episode, well, yesterday's episode, I guess, was on the Matrice Richardson case. And I actually just finished my second book, and her case is in there as well because it's just one that I can't really wrap my head around. And if you hear other noises, I got pets everywhere and they're just being obnoxious. Anyways, the Matrice Richardson case, if you haven't heard of it, she was in her early 20s, I believe. She had just finished her bachelor's degree, and she had gone down into Malibu for a night just to have like a nice sunset and a nice dinner. But for weeks before this, she was sending cryptic messages to everyone. And thank you, Lainey. I saw your live too, and it was very good. Anyways, she was sending cryptic messages like, it just didn't sound like it was her talking through the messages, and it didn't sound as if she was making any sense. She was telling her mom she wanted to be Mother Nature rather than a psychologist, which is what she went to school for, and her parents just couldn't figure it out. But they didn't really get concerned until the night she technically went missing. Hold on one second. So the night she went down to Malibu, she ended up going to a fancy restaurant where she bought like a $60 steak, and like somehow $30 got added to that because at the end of the night, her bill was up to $90. Oh, there we go. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to talk to you finally.
Nice to talk to you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Oh, now I can hear you way better. Not too bad.
I'm glad it was you finally got on here. It's a little confusing to me still.
Yeah, but the weird thing is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you can finish.
No, I clicked on the auto settings like it told me to do. And when I tried to click the drop-down box for my headphones and microphone, it wouldn't let me change anything. But when I clicked on and accepted yours that you just sent me, it went through just fine.
That's weird. I don't know how all that works because I'm not great at technology. I just kind of sent you the link that was in the messages on the side.
Oh, well, yeah. Who the hell knows?
Okay, so if you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast, I've looked at your Twitter profile and such, but I don't really. What do you do on your podcast? Like, what do you discuss?
Well, I tend to focus on lesser known crimes. I don't focus on the bigger guys. I don't really touch. Like, we'll do once a season. We'll do one of the bigger guys, Ed Kemper. This season's finale is Charles Manson. But we tend to focus on smaller, much more heinous crimes that most people don't even know happened.
Okay. I like that because I do a lot of the more famous ones because they do interest me. But once in a while, I sprinkle in a few that I found on a random link or something like that.
Yeah, and that's what I focus on, is the ones that aren't known. Like, there are cases that are way worse than almost any serial killer, but nobody knows about them.
Yeah. What were a few of your not favorite cases, but the ones you really liked sharing about so that their story could get out there?
Oh, solved or unsolved, or both?
Either one. I'm open to all of them.
The Jesse Dotson case really, really was bad. Lamarcus Davidson might be one of the worst crimes I've ever heard of that nobody knows about.
Was that one solved or unsolved?
Those were both solved.
Okay.
But it's still just the details. It's amazing that more people didn't know about it. It's as brutal as they were, as just as horrible. It's just it's very hard to believe that nobody ever heard of some of those cases.
Yeah. Since those are both solved, you have a few like unsolved ones? Because I wouldn't mind looking into a few that were lesser known.
Sure. The one that I just did I actually just did a show on was the Justice for DJ.
Oh, okay. I did one
DJ
on that
Fickey.
too.
Yeah, great case. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable that they refused to press charges.
Yeah, I can't fathom that. Even when his sister sent me all like the case files.
Yeah, I had her. She was on my show.
Yeah, I read through just his wife's like confession, I guess, or witness
statement that she wrote after well, not only that, did you watch the interrogation videos?
Yeah.
He said he shot him.
Are you talking about the interrogation video with Mike or Mark? Mike. I'm not sure which the
name. The two short clips that she had in there by the TBI and the GBI. Or I'm sorry, the GBI and the Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
Where he's explaining how everything happened.
Okay. So yeah,
he flat out said that his hand was on the trigger.
Yeah, because he said both of DJ's hands were on like the barrel of the gun.
Barrel, which was actually, and the way he described it, if you looked at the autopsy report, it was absolutely impossible. The way he described it was not possible.
Well, yeah, because he said it was. I just remember him saying it wasn't like in his mouth; it was like further away from him.
But then he said that the barrel was in his mouth.
Okay.
But the way that the gun blast happened was in a downward trajectory through his cheek.
Yeah.
So there was no way. First of all, there's no way from a sitting stance that you could have done that.
No.
I guess not a sitting stance, a sitting position. Sitting stance would be implying that you're standing. But from a sitting position, you couldn't do that. It's physically impossible.
Yeah. And they, especially with the size, like, I don't know what the size of his arms was, but unless you had extremely long arms, you couldn't even hold it like that.
No. And even though it was a sawed off, the thing was, though, it went through his left cheek, which means he would have had to held it with his left hand. He's right-handed.
Yeah. So he couldn't
You don't hold the gun with your offsuit, with your non-dominant hand.
No.
I mean, that case, and especially with everything that's going on in Georgia right now, with the gentleman that got shot by the two guys, I'm sure you've seen the video of that. They arrested them tonight. Okay. They arrested the father and son tonight. But the fact that, and as a matter of fact, she's pretty upset because that case is, and rightfully so, is getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
But her brother's is still being completely ignored.
Yeah. I mean, they should all get the same amount of attention, but that is a huge thing in the media right now.
Yeah, it's and rightfully so. I mean, that crime is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's just,
and the fact that there's a video of it is even more unbelievable.
Oh, did you see it?
Yeah, I did watch it. I kind of regret watching it, but yeah.
Who was the third person taping, though?
I don't know. I was wondering that because as I started watching the video, I was wondering if it was the person or the people who shot him that were taking the video, but it's not. It's someone else who drove up.
I guess they said it was. Now, this could be wrong because Lord knows all the crap that goes around on the internet, but it's the sister and daughter of the two guys that killed him. So
that seems odd. Like, did they know something was going to happen? Because
they said no. Well, yeah, I guess the whole story, and again, you only get bits and pieces. And I actually think it was a mistake that they released that tape, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But I guess the father called the son and said that the guy that they thought was breaking into homes was running, and then called the daughter, and she drove up behind them and videotaped it.
Okay.
How accurate that is.
Yeah.
Again, why would you? I mean, the first thing I'm going to say if I'm their defense lawyer is, why would we call somebody to videotape it if our whole intent was murder, which kind of blows their case out of the water as far as premeditation goes. Yeah, that's going to be but there again, though, the fact that there's been no charges when there's obviously something pretty shady going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Georgia has got some issues right now.
I think they've had issues for a while, obviously because of the DJ case, and also, have you heard of the Kendrick Johnson case?
I have. That's a great case, actually.
Yeah, like I'm not sure where I stand on it, like accident versus murder or any of that, but the fact is GBI did not handle that case correctly.
And the sad part is unfortunately, like with Kendrick and the other guy, I think his name is Audrey. Audrey. I'm the one that we were just
Ahmed
talking about.
or something like that.
Yeah, his last but it's pronounced weird.
Okay,
and that's neither here nor there. But yeah, it's both of those, the Kendrick Johnson case and his, are getting so much blowback being racial.
Yeah.
That the cases like DJ's don't get any of the attention because they can't spin that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Which is not right, but media is they're in it for themselves. They want to get the clicks, they need to get the downloads. So it is what it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I would like to look into more cases that have to do with GPI or GBI and see if there's even more of a trend, because those are the only 3 cases I know of. But I'm sure if they were this negligent in these 2 cases, then there has to be more somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. I think the only issue you're going to run into is that I would be willing to bet that the majority of the cases weren't GBI to begin with.
Okay.
So it would be tough to find them based on that. I don't know that you could filter it for that because all these other cases were actually local sheriff's issues that then got picked up by the GBI. So I think that might be the only issue that you have, is actually when you're sorting through getting all that stuff situated, actually coming down to that aspect. I think it would be tough to sort it that way. You'd probably have to do a lot of backtracking as far as what county it went through and what sheriff's department before you got to GBI.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which is just, I'm sure there's probably some way to do it, but it would just kind of make it a pain in the rear.
Yeah, I have the patience to look at cases I can find everything on, but trying to connect cases just seems a little too far out there for me to do, at least.
Well, and especially because a lot of times you don't have access to things like police reports and things like that. So you're not going to see a connection to it because it was just picked up at a different aspect, and it's tough. And like those cases, like Kendrick Johnson and DJ, if it wasn't for people that were actually out there stumping for them, you probably wouldn't even know about them.
That's true.
There's a lot of them like that out there. That's sad.
In the Kendrick Johnson case, what was your opinion on the family releasing all the autopsy photos?
Here's the thing with anything like that. I think it's always, and I said this, I got railed last night in a Facebook group. I don't believe any of that should ever be released.
Okay.
And there's a couple reasons I say that. It's great that it can put pressure on police to do something, but the problem is it also taints your jury pool. And the issue with that is you're not going to be able to, I shouldn't say you're not going to, but it's going to become a lot more difficult to actually find a jury that's not seen the shooting, that's not seen the autopsy photos, that's not seen and read everything there is about the case. The sad part is especially with the one we were just talking about, Ahmed, is that if it wasn't for the tape being released by the family, there probably would have never been charges.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have had to have gotten to that part to get some sort of justice for him, because looking at the videotape, but I had the same feeling you did when I watched it. I'm like, oh, why the hell did I watch that? But seeing it, you look at it and you go, how is something not been done about this? There's no way that prosecutors could have looked at this and said, self-defense.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
He was just running on his own.
Is it because the older gentleman that shot him is a cop? I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I feel like although that shouldn't have an impact, it almost always does somehow.
Especially in the
yeah, I could see that. One more.
It is, and I mean, I lived down south for 13 years. It can be touch and go in some areas.
Okay. one more question about the Kendrick Johnson case. Then we can move on from that case. So do you know, like the autopsy photo that the family shared originally to say, like, our son shouldn't look like this. Obviously, he didn't just accidentally die. This was obviously a beating. But they showed after the autopsy. How do you feel about them sharing that and spreading like that false information compared to the actual photo that was him when he was found, if that made any sense?
No. I get you. I get what you're saying. I guess, again, and the funny thing, not funny, there's nothing funny about it, but I'm actually looking at the autopsy photo now. It's one of those things to where it's obvious that something happened. I mean, he didn't fall in a hole, and this didn't happen accidentally. It's sad that and again, I'm assuming they felt the same way that the other gentleman's mother did, that they felt like they had to do this in order to get some sort of justice. The fact that a family would feel so backed into a corner that they would release something so gruesome is it's a condemnation on not only our criminal justice system but the people working in it, because there's no, I mean, be 100% honest, you can just look at any of the pictures and anybody that's even not a trained forensic pathologist can see that something happened, and to rule it as no foul play is just it's awful.
But so the one they shared was after the autopsy. So it was after they had to basically take the skin off to get to the skull and the brain. So it does look quite a bit more deformed than like right after he was found. Do you think that had any impact on how people reacted to it?
Of course. I would assume it would, because obviously you're looking at, I don't want to say you're looking at worst case scenario, but you're looking at worst case scenario. You're looking at what the body is going to look like after it's been medically examined, and you're basically, it's at this point in time like a Lincoln log. You've put it back together and things don't really fit the way they should. It's dramatic. Again, it's super dramatic. But even the bad thing is, even if you look at the autopsy pre-autopsy photos, it's actually not that far off than the post-autopsy photos. So, I mean, and again, I think it more boils down to, for me, how sad it is that the parents felt like that needed to be released in order to get some sort of justice, because I mean, it's like there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no way you can look at this and say it was justifiable or it was accidental. It's just not possible.
Yeah. And my whole thing with that was, I'm assuming since you've seen the autopsy, you've seen like the photos of the gym and stuff. Have you seen the one with the shoe on top of the blood puddle?
Yeah, I'm looking the black and white Nike. Yeah.
So that one is the one that kind of got me. I think it was, I don't know what podcast it was, but it was another one that mentioned that photo. And after it, I had to look it up right away. And although like the blood doesn't go all the way to the bottom of the shoe, it just seemed odd to me that there would be able to be any blood under the shoe and not have the shoe with any blood on it.
Blood on it. Which makes you think that it was placed there after the blood was dry.
Which he couldn't have done if he was stuck in the tube.
No, it would have been impossible. Yeah. I mean, I guess, no. I mean, any way you shake it, any way you look at it, there is no way that you could have possibly, just like we were talking about DJ Fickey, you can't shoot yourself from a sitting position in a downward angle if your arms aren't 7 foot long. You couldn't have placed a shoe on top of a blood pile with no blood on it unless it was placed there
after you were dead or
whatever. Yeah, you were murdered. Yeah, after you were dead. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's the one that kind of got me, because before I saw that photo, I always assumed like it was just an accident and people were overreacting. And then I saw that photo, and then I got into the other photos, and like actual reports of stuff, and my opinion completely flipped.
There are also defensive wounds on his hands.
Okay, I never heard about that.
Yeah, there's a picture I'm looking at right now. It looks like his left hand has got defensive wounds on it. There's cuts on his knuckles.
Yeah.
And again, that generally doesn't happen unless you're defending yourself, unless there's something that you're defending yourself against. But there's even pictures. I mean, there's no way. I mean, yeah, it's definitely his left hand, because I'm seeing another angle now, and there's several cuts on one of his fingers also. So there's no way that you. I mean, that just it wasn't an accident. It's
like
just
a cut or two on your hand could be an accident, but more than that, it just doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, improbable at best.
Since we're talking about like weird cases in like the South, have you heard of the Brandon Lawson case? He stormed out of the house after he had a fight with his girlfriend, and then the next time he contacted someone, he was on a highway and calling because he ran out of gas. And then after that, there's a really weird 911 call that people have totally different opinions on what is said in it, but he's never been found. Okay. Like his truck was found, but that was all.
Strange. Is this the one that was they thought he was a meth addict?
So he did drugs at one point, and apparently the fight with his girlfriend was because he had gotten back on drugs recently, and he was really distant from the family. So that's when he stormed off.
All right.
And I just recently talked to someone who has looked at this case a lot, and they presented like the theory of like apparently people who are addicted to meth burrow sometimes, which I've never heard of that, and I don't really know how it happens, but they neither, but they presented that as maybe a reason why they didn't find the body. To me, I don't think a human being could burrow that far down, but it's still a really interesting case.
Yeah, I mean, a human burrowing that sounds strange that just doesn't sound right. But I guess it's one of those things to where it's like one of my favorite cases, another unsolved one we can touch on here in just a second. But it's I did a huge show on it, the Colonial Parkway murders. Never finding a body is, if it's foul play, is almost impossible. They always turn up, generally somewhere, somehow.
If it is foul play, or if it isn't. Okay.
If it is foul play, it's very difficult to hide a body to where nobody's going to ever find it. There's going to be something somewhere. There's going to be disturbed earth. There's going to be something generally that leads to something. Now, I think the problem that you run into with Lawson is that he was in construction, if I'm not mistaken. And he was even working on pipelines at one point in time.
I know he was in construction. I'm not certain on the pipelines thing.
The issue that you're going to run into with something like that is that you're going to oftentimes if it is foul play, and we'll just look at it from the perspective because of what we do. Anybody involved in true crime is generally, it seems like, naturally a cynic. So if we're going to look at it from that aspect, you're going to have somebody that has access to a lot easier ways to bury a body that would never be found. You can be poured in concrete. There can be just saying that, let's just assume that he was working on a pipeline. If it's an underground pipeline, there's, if you're digging 6 to 8 feet down, there's a lot of places to get rid of a body that way. So while I would say in the general sense, it would be almost impossible to hide a body that nobody would ever find. I mean, it's possible, I guess.
It's happened a few times at least. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I would just think that I'd be willing to venture a guess to say 99% of bodies, dead bodies, are found. So I guess it would be stupid to say that it's not possible. But I would say that it's probable that if it was foul play, that he was found. If he was truly still an addict, though, at the same time, addicts have an innate ability to disappear and sometimes never be seen again.
Yeah, I could understand that. So you said, like, hiding a body, if it's foul play, would be difficult. But you said if he was working on a pipeline, he could have, like, been in there. Okay.
Not just there. He, from what I'm reading in his background, his whole background is in construction. So assuming that he would be hanging out with somebody that's also in that type of field in construction, it would be a lot easier to hide a body if you have access to that type of equipment and that type of area being worked on than it would be as if you're just some Joe Schmo in Southside Chicago and you're killing somebody. You know,
that makes sense. That was really the only question I had in that case. So if you want to move on to like the Colonial Parkway murders, we can move on to that. I don't know what.
Now,
I am not. I've heard of it, but I really haven't looked into it.
Oh. Wow. Okay. So it's actually it was a fan's request that I covered that show. And it's really wild because there was 5 double homicides that may or may not have been connected. And I say that and I laugh, but they don't know if it was connected because they were obviously unsolved. There were there was a couple similarities between a lot of the murders that we came across in the show. And I read everything. As a matter of fact, I had access to the police reports and things of that nature. And I don't think it's ever going to be solved, but one of the double murders that they do not believe was connected to it was the only set that the bodies were never found, which is why I was saying that it's very rare. It's not impossible, but it's very rare that bodies aren't found. But that's a great example. If you want to look into a great unsolved case where there has just been an unbelievable amount of nothingness with as many murders.
Okay, I'm going to have to look into that then.
Yeah, the first couple was, and I believe the first murder was in, if I recall off the top of my head, 85 or 86. It was a lesbian couple, and I don't know
I'm
how old
21.
you are. Yeah. Pretty young. In 85. Okay, so
no,
you weren't even alive when this happened. I mean, I was just a little boy when it started, but it was, in 85, 86, homosexual couples weren't really that accepted publicly. So what they did is they would have to, sneak away whenever they could get some private time. And that's when they were killed. The second couple wasn't really a couple. It was a 14-year-old girl with a 24-year-old guy. Our theory that we came up with was that it wasn't the longstanding theory is that they thought it was a police officer.
Okay.
Or someone in law enforcement because of the way the cars were all situated, because the cars were left behind in every instance. The driver's side door was either open or the window was rolled down. The keys were on the dashboard. So they felt it was law enforcement generally. I did this show with my co-host and Malice podcast, the Malice Pod. And we actually came up with, we believed it actually may have been a religious fanatic, because every one of the cases that we could seemingly tie together had a very taboo type relationship. You had 2 gay couples that were actually killed, the first and the last one. You had an underage girl with an overage guy in an area where they were thought to be buying drugs. So what we came up with was that it might have actually had a more religious fanatical spin on it versus a police officer.
Yeah, that would make sense. When everybody knows of the Zodiac Killer, obviously, but a lot of those, or I honestly don't know all the cases, so don't quote me on this, but a lot of them were couples, I believe.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So people have pushed out the theory that maybe he was someone that was against the couples, like having that alone time or something along those lines.
Yeah, a lot of the popular theories with the Zodiac was that he suffered from some sort of sexual dysfunction. So when he saw couples together, it enraged him because they were possibly doing what he couldn't. So yeah, I mean that would totally make sense. Same thing with Berkowitz, though. He was the son of Sam, they feel like he was rejected by a female of a specific body type and hair color, which is why I don't know if you're super familiar with Son of Sam, but the summer that happened, they had women, like all the women in New York were dyeing their hair a different color because he was only targeting a specific type of woman. So a lot of people felt like he was rejected by that type of woman. So he went on.
And that makes sense. In a lot of my cases, I always, like, because they're all unsolved, obviously, but I will say, like, this suspect only met this victim once, but like that's all it takes for someone to latch on. So even if they weren't rejected by the person, they could have like an idolized version of that person and just go off and kill people that look like them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All it takes is a slight in line at a grocery store for some of these people to just be set off. And then they see that target in everybody that they see. You know, if they see blonde hair and glasses, that's the person that slighted them. That's the person that cut them off in their car. That's the person that their boyfriend or girlfriend left them for. That's all it takes for some of these people with these severe psychoses to snap, is just something that's relatable, which is why you see in almost every serial killer, every serial killer, I can't say all, there's some similarity in victimology and obviously MO.
With that, though, there was the serial killer / like cannibal Richard Chase, I believe his name was. I don't know if I'm right on that, but he was the person who would only go into unlocked homes because he felt that was some type of invitation. Yeah.
They were inviting him in. Yeah. There was that was what I want to say
somewhere around that time, but that's kind of when most of them were active.
Yeah. Another one in California, shocker of all shockers, the killing state. That California's just got an unbelievable amount of serial killers. But yeah, that's exactly what it was. He found a home that was open and felt like it was an invitation for him to come in.
So that one, besides the locked versus unlocked door, was pretty much completely random, I guess.
Yeah, except in his mind, it wasn't random. It wasn't because you said it was the invitation. He, how many victims did he have? I want to say 6 or 7. And he had, though, he thought he was a vampire. He had a necrophilia fetish. He was all over the map as far as, I mean, there are some serial killers you can look at and say, you are going to kill somebody.
Yeah,
he's one of them.
No, he definitely did. I was trying to see how many. Oh, keep going.
Tell me some of your favorite. I'm sorry, trying to see what?
No, you can continue. I was trying to look up how many victims he had, but 6. Okay.
6. He's got 6. It was 6. Yeah, 51-year-old, and it's funny because then you can see though in his victimology that his victims, besides, actually there is nothing in common with them. Ambrose Griffith, 51, Teresa Wallen, 22, Evelyn Mira, 38, her son Jason, 6, her nephew David, 22 months old, and her friend Dan, 51. So the victimology has nothing to do with anything. Yeah, it was all him when he saw an unlocked door. Just like there are people that are habitual car thieves. They see a car door open, they think this was left open for me. It's kind of apples and oranges, but it is what it is.
I just did the Springfield 3 case, which is my episode coming out like next week. And that one, it really amazed me that when the friend and her boyfriend showed up to the house, they ended up just walking inside because the door was unlocked. Like, I know it was 1992. I know it was like a different time and a safe neighborhood, but they stated they had never been to the house before. And they also thought all 3 women inside were still sleeping. So it struck me as really odd that they would just walk in.
And I think though that's one of the times where it's almost you feel, not that you don't feel bad for anybody that's a victim of a serial killer, but they're almost a victim of circumstance at that point, where as if their door would have been locked, there would have been nothing. And it's just one of those things to where it's like, oh man, if just one thing would have happened, then you know what I mean. It's one of those things where I almost feel like with serial killers, it's just kind of the luck of the draw type deal. And I know that sounds crazy, but so many of them, it's more about a specific way to kill than it is victimology. And some people, some of them not. I mean, it's just, there's no rhyme or reason, which is why it makes them so damn terrifying. So tell me about some of your favorite cases.
Let's see. The one that kind of got me started into true crime was the Debbie Wolf murder. Have you ever heard of that one? Okay. That one, I don't know how I found it, but I found a whole page on it. And I just got into that one because it seemed so odd that there were like the clothes on the floor, the weird message, her purse shoved under the bed, and like she was found in a barrel in the middle of a pond, and the police still ruled it an accidental drowning. No.
An accidental death. Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah.
The day after Christmas, and I remember.
They did an episode
I think Unsolved Mysteries even did something on her. But I remember, I mean, it was like the day after Christmas. They had a great Christmas, and that's to be found in the middle of a pond, stuffed in a.
It was like an oil barrel that she used to use for firewood. Yeah.
An oil barrel.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just. I mean, that's not accidental. It's like Kendrick. You know, you
no,
don't get
especially if you
rolled
like
up
couldn't fit in there while you were alive in the first place.
Alive, exactly. No, she's a fun case. She's a fun case study because it's one of those, and I hate to say it, but cases like hers, cases like DJ Fickey, where they just, it's almost like it's easier for the police to rule it that way because in her case, there really was not much forensic evidence, if I recall. There wasn't much forensic evidence leading to anybody else. So it's one of those things, and you're just like, ugh.
Yeah,
we'll just
but there was even
accidental
like no reason to rule it drowning. Even if they did accidental, they shouldn't have ruled it accidental drowning. Because in drowning, and plus she only had like half a teaspoon of water in her lungs, and she had no froth or foam, which is like a main indicator they use to diagnose death by drowning.
Again, it's unfortunately, it seems like it's one of those times where it's just easier for the police to say it's this way because we don't.
In that one, they also like they had the barrel and they took her body but left the barrel at her home. And then the next morning when they went back, the barrel was gone. And that's when they stated there never was a barrel. So in that one, I don't know if they're just trying to cover their tracks for not doing a good collection of evidence or if they were just oblivious to it.
Exactly. It's one of those things to where, again, you just, there were so many errors from the get-go that you just don't know what to believe and what not to believe because things were just screwed up from the beginning. But I mean, the same thing, like you said, with the Zodiac Killer, though, it's just like the last cipher that they received. They spent all these years trying to figure it out, and it just may not even be. It may be nothing. It seems like some of these people, like these, like you said, the Zodiac, there are things that they just do that to play with people. But at the same time, there's some truth to it. But like you said, then with Debbie, it sounds like total police error. And it just makes you wonder how many unsolved cases, because, you know, it varies by state, but generally not much more than 50% of murders get solved. How much of that is just due to sheer negligence?
And that always makes me think of the Kristen Smart case, because so many people are so sure, like they know who the suspect is, they know where her body is, but police just won't dig up the area.
And here's the problem with that, though, is that, and I don't want to say, see, I almost think it's a little bit different in her case because they did do so much on her case and everything turned up nothing, that you almost get to the point to where you just can't keep saying, okay, we're just going to keep doing it and keep.
Well,
Now,
yeah.
for the family's sake, you want them to keep doing it and keep doing it. But at the same time, you've got other cases and murders piling up, and you unfortunately have to move on at some point in time. You can't keep spending time on
Yeah.
same thing. I mean, John Benet Ramsey is a prime example. I mean, think about the media attention that
Yeah,
case
it
got
still does.
worldwide for years. At some point in time, though, you just kind of have to, as an officer, go, we've kind of exhausted everything here.
Mhm.
Hope something turns up somewhere
Yeah,
eventually.
that was
but you
another
just kinda
one
have to
where
move on.
the entire crime scene was just contaminated, though.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many. It seems like, and that's the sad part, is that there's so many of these cases that are unsolved to where especially the crime scene gets so damaged and so just discombobulated that unfortunately you're kind of stuck in a spot and you're just, you don't know how much got screwed up and you don't know how much evidence was tracked in or tracked out. Same thing again. I hate going back to the DJ Fickey case. They never even cordoned off the trailer that he was shot in. They let
and
people
she
walk
saw
in
the
and
whole
out. They let the
aftermath.
mother walk right in. They let the guy they let the guy burn the couch that night.
Yeah.
I mean, burn the love seat, whatever. But they let him destroy evidence. They told him on the 911 recording to pick up the weapon and check it. No,
that's
you
like
don't
the number
do
one
that.
thing. You need to
just
preserve
don't do
evidence
that.
for it to be a fair case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They told him to pick it up and check. First of all, if he's still alive, a trained officer knows that going in. You don't need a random person who called in the suicide, no less, who had a knife to this guy's throat, had beat him with a golf club and a baseball bat. You don't need that person.
And it was
touching
like
a
single shot shotgun.
I mean,
and so it was the suspect's shotgun. So I don't understand. Well, I kind of understand why he didn't tell them right away it was only a single shot, because he was trying to get rid of evidence, essentially, I'm sure. But that just makes it all the more frustrating because there was no need to move the gun and check if it was unloaded.
No, and that's the other ironic part about this whole thing is that at worst you would think that the police and GBI, it was well known that was his gun. Why wasn't he charged as a felon in possession of a firearm?
Yeah, he should have been charged with something.
Reason that he shouldn't. I mean, there's just so much wonky stuff. He should have, even if you did it. And I know it's people might not like this thought, but even if you did it while you investigated, because there was obviously something that was not right in this case.
Well, yeah.
So there's so many things that weren't right in this case. But if there would have been something for somebody to focus on, who knows? But I mean, there's just so many of them out there that are just...
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that they haven't been solved at that point. Yeah. And a lot of them are too old to be solved, and the evidence is just gone, or the evidence just never was collected. Okay.
Even again, here we go again. We're going to talk on DJ. The listing of the autopsy photos.
There
should have been 53 photos.
That one confused me
7,
so much. I had to like message his sister back right away. I was like, so is this email saying that there was like 30 whatever photos, but most of them were of other autopsies? Okay.
So there was 53 photos. 46 of them were missing.
Yeah, and she said they were
there
like
weren't even DJ.
To tell why they had so many missing was that they would basically go around and take pictures of the body all at once, or bodies all at once. But then you would think, but you would think even if for some reason they were doing it that way, all of DJ's photos would be in one line, and then it would go to the next body and the next body. But it wasn't.
All one line, exactly. Yeah, you would take your 10 or 15 pictures, 20 pictures that you need of the one body. Then you would move to the next one. You're not going to... It's not the hokey pokey. You don't take the right arm of everybody in a row, then the left arm of everybody in a row. That's not the way it works. And let's be honest, this is a very small area that happened in anyway.
Not enough to
I
save
can't
that many
imagine they had many
pictures.
dead
If you're only
bodies at one
taking a
time.
few, like 3 or 4 pictures per body, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, then again, like you said, you have his wife's statement, who said what she saw. You have the other guy that testified that wrote a statement saying that what he saw. You have the
Okay.
guy Marshall, I believe was his nickname, that actually did the crime. I mean, basically say the cop asks him,
Yeah, and he even
where were
seems
DJ's hands?
he
They were both
was
on the barrel.
well doing that. Like in the
Well, if they were both on the
interrogation video,
barrel,
he seems to kind of get the story for how the gun was moving just out of nowhere. Yeah,
well, yeah, because then he blames the wife. He said, "Oh, I
that's
didn't want to say this when she was there, but she jerked my arm and it went off."
No,
Even if that's the case, it's not a suicide. Even if you just take him at his
no, it's
what
an
he said at face value
accidental.
right there, it's not a suicide.
Whatever.
It's a, exactly. It's involuntary manslaughter. And there's, I mean, hell, you might even get probation. You might get 5 or 10 years probation out of it because if you can honestly prove it was an accident.
No, he
but there's
didn't
no
pull
way
the
in hell
trigger,
you
so
can
it
rule it a
could never
suicide.
be a suicide.
There's no way. No, and as a matter of fact, he was just talking to his mother, a few minutes before that. Please come get me. And the day before that, he was talking about how much, he wanted to buy his son a train for Christmas. And that's what we talked about on the show is that people that
they
generally
don't
are
make
legitimately
future plans
suicidal
because they don't
speak
plan
in
on
future
being
tense.
here.
It's all past tense. All he was doing was making future plans. He was excited that him and his wife are getting back together. He was trying to kick his habit again. She was trying to get help. He was trying to get to see his kids. There's no way somebody in that mindset. Exactly. No. And you just don't have those conversations if you're suicidal.
It doesn't
it's
matter
all about
at
past
that
tense. There's nothing in the future. Precisely because you don't see yourself if you're legitimately suicidal as having.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous case. At least what the ruling was is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you really I was sitting in my office when I was reading that, and I literally I put my head in my hand a couple times.
Yeah.
And I just went, how? I just don't like if you, and I said this on the show too, if somebody told me that that happened and then told me how
it sounds like something
you're
completely made
lying
up
to me.
because
There's
that's
no way
just
that's
so
possible.
improbable.
And then and again, that's kind of what my specific focus on my show is. And that's why I like talking about some of the smaller cases or smaller in media coverage because they don't get as much coverage, but some of them are so unbelievable. I just had one yesterday from Marcus Wesson, who killed 9 of his own children that were actually his grandchildren because he impregnated his own children.
Yeah, that sounds
form
insane.
A family cult, basically. Yeah, I mean, he had 16 kids living at the house with him, and he had taught the 6-year-olds to
I'm
kill
gonna have to
the other children.
Listen to that one.
Marcus Wesson. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There are cases like this where I didn't hear about this guy, and I've studied I mean, I've literally read thousands of cases and tens of thousands of appeals. I like to read the appeals personally because I think it gives a lot more in-depth information. But I was reading this and I was like, what? What? There's no way this happened. He bought 9 mahogany coffins from an antique shop and the kids would sleep in them. He convinced the kids, he wrote a Bible and he convinced the kids that Jesus Christ was a vampire.
I've never heard about that. And I can't believe I've never heard about that. That seems...
Marcus Wesson. Yeah, I mean, like the show I think just went up yesterday, as a matter of fact. And it's a case that I was recording it and I had to pause it. I probably paused it, I don't know, 20 or 25 times because even as I'm reciting and I'm talking about some of these talking points, I'm just like, no, that's not real, and it is. It's just unbelievable. And as a matter of fact, okay, so quick background on him. When he came back from the army in the 70s, he married a woman that was 15 years older than him that already had 8 kids. He married her 14-year-old stepdaughter, had 9 children with her, and then married nieces and his daughters when they were 8 years old. After he had killed the 9 children, of them actually came to court and supported him wearing their wedding rings. I'm telling you, it's a case where literally, if you didn't know it was real, you'd be like, "There's no way."
And that
something like this
sounds
really
like
happened.
at the least it would be
But
one
it did.
that caught public attention because it's so out there.
Exactly. I mean, the fact that you had another serial killer, or I guess he wasn't really a serial killer. He'd be more of a mass murderer in the state of California, because it seems like that's where they all are. But he turned his family into a cult. He would.
Yeah.
It's one of the weird. I mean, the whole story was weird. But out of all the children he had in the house, he would make the boys and girls stay on different sides of the house because he didn't want them to become sexually attracted to each other.
Kids or his niece and nephews. That's
and impregnating.
That takes
all of
a
his
lot
children.
of twists and turns.
There was more wild stuff in that case, and I didn't do too long. I think it was like only like a 27 or 28 minute episode. It wasn't super crazy long, but it's you start going through this stuff and you're like, there's no way this is real, but it is. I mean, they have crime scene photos of, they snap pictures through the window and the coffins all over the floors, and even, as a matter of fact, the one of his wives, his daughters, that was his wife, she talked about after he was convicted, said, well, no, he really bought the coffins because he loved vampires.
That's insane.
But it made a good
no matter
bed for the kids
like
also.
what way you look at it. Why would you spend money on 9 coffins?
The way you look at it is. And there's another ironic part about the whole thing. He never had a job.
Yeah.
The whole family lived off of welfare their entire lives. As a matter of fact, the one thing, which is why I think one of the reasons this went on for so long, is that there was almost 100 confirmed addresses that he had since he come back from the army. So they would literally just get evicted, and there was no. He was never in one place long enough for people to. How many years
was that, if you know? Like from when he got back to the army to when this happened?
Let's see here. I just.
Yeah, that's okay.
This.
Just like 100.
My notes. I want to say he came back. He came back from the army in 71, I think.
Okay.
And the murders took place in 2004. This isn't an old case. This is a relatively, as far as serial killers go, is
so that's about like
relatively
33 years and 100 places he lived, or over 100. That's insane.
Yeah.
Okay.
100 confirmed addresses.
Yeah.
So you figure at least probably 3 a year. And that doesn't include, him and the kids had lived in boats. They had lived in abandoned houses. What the hell is a houses? They lived in abandoned houses. They had lived, they've lived everywhere. Hotels, motels. But living that transient lifestyle, though, unfortunately there was nobody to.
Yeah, they couldn't catch on.
He was never in one place long enough for them to know what was going on. Driving a school bus full of your own children, you think would be
that's very odd.
Weird
I will definitely go listen to that episode.
It is. It's one of those where I just kind of, when I went through everything, it was very, very, if you didn't know that it was real, you wouldn't believe it.
Definitely understand that. So last week, like the last thing me and the guest, I guess, talked about was how she felt on the Gannon Stouch case. Still not sure how to pronounce that last name. But since that is a case I'm really still looking into at this time, I wanted to get your opinion on that as well.
Here's the thing that you're going to run into with the Stouch case. And again, I believe a paralegal was just charged with.
Was it the affidavit of Leticia? Okay, yeah.
Yes, yeah, Leticia. it's one of those things where if she didn't do it, we'll look at it from that aspect first. If you didn't do it, but you knew he was dead, why did you wait so long to report the death? There's no reason. That's the first thing that, I mean, when I looked at, I haven't looked too far in depth. I've read, some of the basic stuff put out. But why did you wait so long to report the death? It's one of those things. She did something. I don't know that she actually committed the murder. For some reason, to me, this almost looks like something else happened and she's covering it up for somebody. Then she did it herself. But I mean, I again, and unfortunately, that's one of the things that's tough when it's a case that's current right now. I touched on one of the, that's why I generally stay away from current cases, because I want more. I want to know when they're convicted. You get all the evidence. You get all of the preliminary hearing investigations and all that stuff. There's more to
than we know.
I'll put it that way. There's a lot more to this than I think than
I'm not sure. Exactly. I talked over the affidavits with Kaylara Owl. She's a big cold case investigator on Twitter, but she told me kind of about the affidavits, and when I looked at that with the actual case, I just kind of found that all of Letitia's, or still not how to pronounce it, all of her claims just seemed
Letitia
like she was pulling them out of a hat. Like, she didn't really have anything to back up anything. Like, she said he was walking to a friend's house and there was no evidence of him walking to the friend's house. And then there was the security camera of her driving up in the truck and he didn't get out, but she said he went through a back gate for some reason. And
there was way too many stories that she had. Way too many stories, which again is one of those things to where there'd be no reason for you to have so many stories if it was true.
And just the blood that was found throughout the house. Her excuse was Gannon got a lot of bloody noses. But when they actually investigated the biggest blood spots, it soaked through the carpet into the concrete. No matter how heavily your nose is bleeding, it's not going to soak to the concrete.
No, I mean, and again, there was blood all over. It wasn't just in one room. There was blood everywhere. I mean, unless you...
Okay.
But here, I mean, I'm going to tell you a funny story. When I was, I don't know, I probably would have been 10 or 11 years old. We had a pool table, and there was a tiny piece of sheet metal that was sticking up. Well, I went to break with my pool stick, and I sliced my finger from my tip to my second knuckle. I went into my room because it was hurting. I was shaking. If you burn your hand, you shake it. You're like, ow. Well, I didn't realize that it had been bleeding, and my mother came upstairs, and there was blood all over my walls.
Yeah.
It was a harmless, innocent thing.
No.
But there wasn't blood soaked through my carpet into the concrete type soak. You know what I mean? It's, again, there's not enough evidence. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of evidence against her. But I think there's more to this. I really think that there was somebody else involved.
Yeah.
That's going to come out
that
eventually.
Could be a huge possibility.
We just don't know it yet.
But when Gannon's remains were found, or right before they were found, she did come up with the excuse that someone broke in and they took Gannon and they asked for one of our suitcases. And obviously that's a complete lie. But if there is someone else in the case, she had to have
100%.
known everything that was going on in order to know that.
Exactly. And even if that was a remotely possible
you would
scenario,
say, I have a missing kid.
Why not report it to the police immediately?
Took him.
yeah, you're not waiting hours or days. That's something you're going to get on immediately. And
Yeah.
her story again, and she's obviously guilty of something. I just wonder how much more to the story we don't know.
Yeah, there has to be at least something else, whether it's pointing to her or pointing to someone else.
Exactly. And I mean, that's you would hope that it all comes out, but even if nothing else comes out, I think they
Yeah,
genuinely
something
have
at
enough
least. She
to
lied to
convict her for
police
whatever,
and she
basically
didn't
whatever the hell
report
they
him
want.
and all that.
Yeah, even, I mean, they know she touched and tampered the body. That's a felony right there. That's going to get her held over for as long as they need to. I don't know. But again, like I said, though, somebody was just a paralegal was just charged with leaking the affidavit.
No.
That type of stuff is not going to help the investigation, though. That's going to hinder things. And I don't know why people will do stupid stuff like that, because they think they're getting justice, but they're really doing nothing but hindering.
Yeah, because there can't be a real trial if all that information is out there.
No, because the first thing when you're going through voir dire and a trial is that they're going to ask you if you have any preconceived notions. How much of this have you seen on TV? How much have you read? Just like the murder that we talked about earlier in Georgia. Good luck finding somebody in the jury pool that hasn't seen the video of the two guys shooting him. It's not going to happen. Exactly. I mean, yeah, it's. I'm looking at the affidavit now.
No, not at all.
They say it's redacted. It's. No, it's not. I mean, there's a couple lines that are redacted. Give me a break. But now I want to read through this. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's still out there. It's a very long read, but
I didn't realize that the whole thing was still out there.
In the end, it's worth it.
32 pages, yeah. Oh God, yeah. But I mean, just like you said, the security surveillance films and things of that nature. You're just It doesn't make sense. It's the cell phones, and she was without her cell phone for hours, yet her screen was unlocked before she found it. Well, if you weren't with it for hours, how was your screen unlocked? It's everything she said is I mean, let's be honest, everything she said is pretty much a lie, and I just wonder who she's lying for, because her goose is pretty much cooked. So now who are you protecting?
Yeah, what are you
protecting? Or what really happened that you feel like you need to come up with so many ridiculous, fantastical
even
stories,
like as soon as he went missing, she started saying to interviewers and stuff like, I can't wait for Gannon to be found so that everyone can see they're wrong about me. She was initially making it all about herself, and I think that's how it continued into all these lies.
And you see that a lot of times with female killers, especially that have issues with their children. Munchausen's syndrome by proxy, I think, is a highly underdiagnosed medical condition for some women. But I mean, like, I'm just looking at the affidavit, and there was, in the back of the Kia Rio, they swabbed for blood, and there was actually 2 profiles that were in the trunk of the Kia Rio. One of them was a male that didn't identify as Gannon. The other one was Gannon Stotches. So who was the other person in there? Again, now we've got a second blood sample in there. Obviously, if it's mixed with Gannon's blood,
was the Kia
put
Rio
the body in the trunk? Who's the male that put the body in the trunk?
Actual car or the rental car? Okay. The one that they suspect drove down to Florida and then back up to
it was the rental.
The East Coast. Okay.
Precisely. Exactly. So who is this male, this unidentified male's blood?
Yeah, she's obviously hiding something.
Obviously there's some connection to it here. So exactly. Was it exactly? I mean, something happened with someone, and she almost sounds like a woman that's caught up. And it's crazy how often you see it with women that are involved in the killing of their children, but she's caught up between her emotions between some other guy and her kids. And it sounds like that's almost maybe who she's protecting. is a lover or an ex-lover, or a lot of times you get the cases to where the male will tell the female, oh, we can't be together because you have kids, or I don't want to be part of the kid's life. And the woman does something insane, like kill her child. And this almost sounds like this may have something to do with it, because now, again, you've got an unidentified male DNA profile that doesn't match Gannon.
Yeah.
Well, there's only one logical reason that their two bloods would be mixed together in the back of a Kia Rio.
I found it hilarious, which nothing about this case was funny, but when Gannon's father filed like divorce papers right after she got arrested, or right after Gannon went missing, like he knew something was off right away.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you would think that he would realize immediately that, yeah, this is just not. But I mean, where was, again, I haven't read the whole
part of it, and then I discussed the rest with people who had read through it.
So you skimmed it? So I
believe they were still living together.
Yet,
the father was
living together
off
as a married couple?
Doing like at a work training or something for that week. So Gannon was alone with Letitia and her kids.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And sounds like her boyfriend.
Yeah, which that could have been a huge motive for the boyfriend or whatever male was there.
Think about it that way. Gannon, if Gannon catches them in an intimate position, obviously she doesn't want her husband to find out.
Yeah, or
they do something
the
to
boyfriend
Gannon
just
because
disliked him so much because he was from another relationship that she had. Like, it wasn't her kid, but he was still a reminder of another relationship.
Yeah, I could see that. But the only reason I would think that might not be the way to go on that aspect, because she's still married and there was no plans for divorce from what I can see until she was arrested. So I don't think he would be thinking that they're going to be at one big happy family and get rid of the kid. It sounds more like to me that Gannon may have walked in on something he wasn't supposed to walk in on. Say
something.
And, oh my God, we have to get rid of him, or he's going to say something and he's going to cause
but also
me
she
to get a divorce,
could have lied to
whatever.
The other man in some way. She could have told him, like, yeah, I'm going to get a divorce. I'm going to do that soon, because that has played out again and again. And he could have acted on that.
Oh, hundreds of times. Absolutely. No, there's a million possibilities, and unfortunately it may never all come out. But until it does come out, then we're just kind of stuck,
I hope it does all come out at some point and it gets completely solved, because
something tells me when she's looking down the barrel of a life without parole sentence that she may
she has a little more of a
exactly, even if it's just to get the possibility of parole.
Kind of personality than keeping someone else safe.
Oh, 100%. She's obviously, so I mean, just from reading the affidavit, she's an obvious sociopath. She can't keep her story straight. Everything is said to either protect her or to make her look in a better light, or, oh, woe was me, I didn't do anything. This person could have done, like you said, he did this, or this person could have done something.
Yeah, but that also, this is the last thing I'll say on this case, but she could have, or she could make all those claims and have them be false, which would also hinder the entire court process and the investigation, because she has such a sense of self. She could name a bunch of people that had nothing to do with this case just to try and get parole.
But I think the problem, and again, I think the only problem that she would run into with that is that they generally would.
Okay.
They're not going to make a deal like that until they exhaust all the options. That's generally how it would work. So even if she tried to say that, the problem is that they're going to then investigate.
Well, that's good to know then.
Find out that she's completely lying, and she wouldn't get that option anyway. Yeah, that's anytime that a deal like that is struck, it's generally going to be pending you being honest. And what's going to happen is they're going to verify that your story isn't honest. and then you're just kind of.
Well, that's good to know. I learned a lot about quite a few cases during this whole chat, so thank you. I'm definitely going to go listen to. Could I have the name? Okay. I'm definitely going to go listen to that case and probably a lot of your other cases because I will. That's one I'll definitely have to talk about.
Yeah, message me when you're done. I would love to get your thought on him.
Even from your little brief summary, that sounds like an insane case.
It's wild. It's wild. And that's, like I said, another reason we focus on the lesser known cases. Like Michelle Blair is another one I focused on. She killed 2 of her 4 children. She insisted that they were molesting her youngest child, but she killed them a year apart and kept them in the freezer for 3 years, a deep freezer in their home for 3 years. The police didn't find out about the murders until she was evicted.
That's crazy
and
too.
They were throwing the stuff out of the apartment.
Earlier in this whole thing, you said one of the craziest cases you've covered, but I can't remember what name that.
Oh, 2 of the 2 crazies. And as a matter of fact, ironically enough, the 2 that wanted to get me into doing this more than just Lamarcus Davidson. It's a case out of Knoxville. 5 people were convicted. They kidnapped and repeatedly raped Channing Christopher and Shannon Newsom, a male and a female. And it's the details of the case I'm not going to get into here because they're almost too graphic. And Jesse Dotson, who was a guy that spent 14 years for murder, ironically enough, got out and about 3 months later killed his entire family, including 3 children. It was actually it was on the first 48. It was a wild. The only reason he got caught is because one of the children he had stabbed in the head, who survived, they actually have the X-rays with the blade sticking out of his head, identified him. Otherwise, he would have got away with it completely scot-free. And these are the cases that we focus on.
How did he get out of jail if he was
heinous, but people just don't know about
murder? So he wasn't obviously convicted of like first-degree murder.
He served 14 years. No, it was a drug deal gone bad. So he got an 18-year sentence. He served 14, and then he had parole for like 5 months. And a month after his parole was completed, he killed his whole family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to, you should look into the case of
stories out there that people just
DeAndre
don't know
Lane, if you haven't heard of that one. Lane. He is the person who was technically convicted of the crime. But he stated he was at a stop sign, or he pulled over to the side of the road, and these people came up to his car and carjacked him, and his daughter was in the back seat. So he was close to his ex-wife's or ex-girlfriend's house, and he ran over there crying and telling her what happened. But later, cops found the car, and his daughter wasn't in there, but there was like a cadaver dog that alerted to the car. But that is the only
Wow.
Yeah.
And he was convicted.
But the only thing that really convicted him in that case was the testimony of the dog handler. It's a series on Netflix. I have to go find it now. But they discuss how different investigative theories don't work. Like how they don't work sometimes. And this one was the cadaver dog one. And they simply convicted him on the cadaver dog handler testimony. And in my opinion, he shouldn't have been convicted from just that. If he was guilty, there should have been more evidence pointing to that.
Yeah, I mean, because just reading a quick article on him, if she died the way he said,
so it's
there's no way that there would have been no forensic evidence somewhere.
Exhibit A, and it's a show on Netflix, and they go over multiple.
It's called what?
It's that one was my favorite episode because it's just
I'm gonna have to watch it.
Crazy. Yeah.
If you're so obviously you watch a lot of true crime right now. There's a great show out called, I believe it's guilty or accused. They're following 7 real life cases, and it's as true as true can be. It's some wild stories, and the first one that came out of like, there's no way they're gonna find.
Yeah,
this
I'm gonna
woman
have to
guilty.
do
It's
that. Have
impossible. They found her
you
guilty. I'm like, get outta
seen
here.
or watched any
So
of the episodes of The Innocence Files? I believe it's called. Yeah, me too. I wasn't sure about the guy in the first
I like those
episode though. The tooth, the bite mark guy. Because
the tooth, yeah, the bite mark guy. He was, and then they tried to say that dental records are more definitive than fingerprints, and I'm like, there's no way. That's just a ridiculous statement. Which is why, again, though,
or
people would be surprised at some of the evidence that people
or
get
some of the
convicted
evidence
on.
they just don't get convicted
And it's
on.
sad because some of it. What's that? Exactly. No, that's a great point. Is that you're looking at them, you're like, how did the person not get convicted? Then in the same breath, how did that person get convicted? And luckily, I mean, evidence and DNA evidence and stuff has come along, a long way. But
it definitely is.
It's a
but
tough world
I will
out
let
there.
you go now because it is 60 minutes past 9. But I really did enjoy talking with you, and I'd love to do this again at some point if we have new cases to talk about. Okay, I will message you on Twitter, and I'll definitely listen to the episode and get back to you on that as well.
I'll tell you what, if you want,
I've
got my schedule of podcasts for the next month. I'll shoot you some of them if you want to come on the show.
Sounds
I'd be happy
good.
to have you.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. We'll talk later on Twitter. You be good. Bye-bye.